What's up YouTube, Capital G here, checking out the brand new ORPHEGEL spell cards that just got leaked. These are of course coming out of Soul Fusion. ORPHEGEL is a new archetype that is part of the World Legacy storyline, which is getting really interesting, especially with the artwork on some of these spell cards. I talked about them yesterday and I thought the archetype looked really interesting. I did think that there were two glaring problems with the archetype so far. The first being the trap cards just weren't impressive at all in my opinion. One of them was essentially kind of like a shittier safe zone, and then the other one I would say is like a shittier version of like dimensional prison, and neither one of those cards really sees any play. They are searchable by Galatea, one of their link monsters, but overall they're really not that impressive. And then the second, I wasn't sure that we'd be able to get their monsters, their main deck monsters, in the graveyard fast enough because they all activate by banishing themselves from the graveyard, and I was like, okay, that's perfectly fine, but other than the link 1, or excuse me, the level 1, which you can obviously link for Link Karibo, I was like, I don't know how we're going to get the level 3 and the level 4 in the graveyard. There is no link 1 for this archetype, so I thought that that could be a problem, but Konami has already addressed that. Their new spell cards are so much better than the trap cards. Anyways, we got 3 cards to talk about. Let's go ahead and break them down. So the first card is Orpha Prime, and I don't know what I am more fascinated by, the effect of the card, which is absolutely amazing, and I actually think it's the best card in the entire archetype, or the lore and the artwork of the card. This definitely explains what Ningirasu has been up to during Cybernetic Horizon, where he wasn't in that pack at all. Obviously, Avram kind of went into the forest, he met the Palladians. What people are saying, and I have to admit I was wrong, Ib is still dead. She died in Flames of Destruction, you know, she killed herself, but what people are saying is that Ningirasu, in his grief of his sister dying, he basically kind of went fucking mad scientist, you know, Full Metal Alchemist. He's trying to like rebuild a robot with his sister's memories, or he's just trying to bring her back to life or something like that. And it's really interesting because even her name in Japanese means like a lifeless doll or something like that. So basically he's on his mad scientist shit, and I'm pretty sure that when Avram sees the new Ib kind of, you know, lifeless robots, that's probably what ends up making those two fight, because he probably thinks that, you know, Ningirasu has created an abomination and this is not what she'd want, and now they're, you know, they were friends, but they basically are going to, you know, fight each other now. But anyways, Orpha Prime is a normal spell that's a hard once per turn. It says send to the graveyard one ORPHEGEL or World Legacy monster that is in your hand or face up on the field. That's the cost. Draw 2 cards. This is 100% exactly what the deck needed. It basically needed a Destiny draw. This is even better than Destiny draw. Well, you know, outside of the whole once per turn thing, but it's better than Destiny draw because you can use your field as well. This easily gets any of your ORPHEGEL main deck monsters in the graveyard. So not only are you going to draw 2 and get the, you know, some other big combo pieces or whatever, you'll have a monster in the graveyard to instantly banish so that you can summon a monster from wherever, your hand, your graveyard, your deck, or whatever. If this card was not a hard once per turn, I would love it even more, but outside of that, I think that this card is absolutely amazing. It's going to be a bona fide 3 of in the archetype because I think it's the best card in the archetype so far. Next is their field spell, which has 2 effects, and it's really strong. The first effect says the effects of link monsters you control whose original name includes ORPHEGEL and monsters in your graveyard whose original names include ORPHEGEL can be activated during your opponent's turn. That is amazing. It's really nice because this deck does have some defensive capabilities, but you know, well, some of their effects could be used really well if you could use them during your opponent's turn. If you look at the new Galatea, the new version of Ib, she's a card that lets you set a trap card straight to your field. So that shitty dimensional prison, I mean, it might not actually be that shitty if you're going to be able to set it during your opponent's turn. Also, Longirisu, he's the card that can send a monster that he's linked to on your opponent's side of the field during, or excuse me, without targeting it. That's actually really good if you can use that during your opponent's turn. That can actually disrupt some of their plays. And really what I like is the fact that it gives you the ability to banish your ORPHEGEL monsters and then special summon during your opponent's turn. So even if you have an open field, your opponent has to be concerned because you never know what you're going to actually summon, because your opponent, you might have multiple ORPHEGELs in your graveyard, your opponent doesn't know which one you're going to activate. So Your opponent always kind of has to be on their P's and Q's, and really, I think that it works well with the next spell that I'm going to talk about. But the second effect of this card says, if this card is in your graveyard, except the turn it was sent there, you can send one card from your hand to the graveyard, add this card to your hand. I like that. It's a recursion ability. It basically means that if this card happens to be destroyed, you can basically get it back during your next turn, and I like that. Or if it's destroyed during your opponent's turn, then obviously during your turn, you should get it back. Probably, and I like the fact that you should probably pitch one of your ORPHEGEL monsters, considering they all float from the graveyard anyways. I think that it just makes sense that there's another way that to kind of get your ORPHEGEL monsters in the graveyard built right into the field spell. So this is definitely a powerful card, and it makes even some of their terrible cards get significantly better. I think this makes Galatea so much better with the first effect. Being able to activate Galatea during your opponent's turn is very legitimate. Then the final card is a continuous spell called ORPHEGEL Einsatz. It's a hard once per turn on the effect. It says if your opponent normal or special summons a monster or monsters, you can choose from your hand or deck one ORPHEGEL or World Legacy monster, and if you do, send it to the graveyard and banish it. This is nice. This is essentially a Foolish Burial built right into it. Now, it does require interaction with your opponent. Your opponent does have to summon for you to be able to activate this effect. However, I think that this card, if you combo with Babel, is incredibly good, because keep in mind, all of the ORPHEGEL monsters float from the graveyard. They all banish themselves, and then, you know, they let you either summon another monster from your graveyard or summon a monster from your deck, etc., etc. There is one, the level 1, that lets you special summon from the hand. That's not technically floating, but the point is you want them in the graveyard. Not just that, you want to banish them because the link monsters put them back in your deck, and then they have abilities that let them basically either give you a trap, Galatea, or Longirisu, you know, can take a monster off your opponent's field. This is really good, and it sets up for some really nice plays. Let's just say that you have Einsatz on the field, and then you have Galatea, and that's all you have on the field. You don't have anything in your graveyard. If your opponent normal summons, what you can do is you can send, I don't know, you can send the dude to the graveyard who lets you special summon from the deck, right? You're going to send him to the graveyard. You're going to activate his effect during your opponent's turn because Babel, your field spell, is going to let you do that. Then, since you have an well, you're going to special summon from your deck. You're going to resolve his effect. Then, since you have an ORPHEGEL monster banish, you can put it back into your deck with Galatea's effect, and you can set a spell or trap. You can activate Galatea's effect during your opponent's turn because you have the field spell. So this is a card that, interesting enough, I think they kind of designed it to be a starter card, but it's really not. I think it's a combo card. It's definitely best if you have Babel. If you have Babel, then I think that this card allows you to do all types of things. But if you don't have Babel, then this card can actually be kind of mediocre because you'll basically have to wait until your turn to activate those cards that you end up sending to the graveyard. That could be kind of slow, as your opponent might kill you, or they might do a whole bunch of stuff. They might get this card off the field. They may lock out your graveyard, etc., etc. I think if you have Babel on the field and you can banish your dudes immediately, start using effects, start summoning, etc., etc., I think this card could be pretty good. So I do think that maybe I don't know, maybe they're like one more card away, but I definitely think they have a decent foundation just off of these new spell cards. The trap cards were not good enough to make them a viable deck, in my opinion. I think the monsters are all fine. I think these spell cards definitely double down. I really feel like the Destiny Draw should not have been a hard once per turn, just because I do feel like that is kind of the main card that fuels this deck, but what do I know? I gotta test them. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on that notification bell for daily videos.